Good afternoon, everybody. We are so glad that you've joined us today. We will get started in about probably 5 minutes. If you are just joining us, please be sure to put your name, your full name, in the chat box. If you would like to receive credit for the professional development PQAS credit hours for the PD registry, please be sure to enter your PD registry ID number with your name into the chat box, and we will be recording that. They will be entered into the registry within 7 days, and you will receive credit. Once we close this event, no additional PQAS credits will be given, so please be sure to enter your PQAS hours now. You can email those to Tracy Weaver. She will put that in the chat, and you can email your address to your registry ID number, pardon me, to her. We are excited to have you here for this session 2 of our mental health series, Who's Caring for the Caregiver? Good afternoon to those just joining us. We are so glad that you are here with us today. Please be sure to put your full name and registry ID number into the chat box if you would like to receive training credit for today's session. We will get started in about 3-4 minutes, and we are glad to have you here with us today. So we're just waiting for some other individuals to join us, and we will get started probably about 5 minutes after, maybe shortly before that. Good afternoon to everyone who is joining us. If you have not already heard my little spiel, thank you for joining us today. If you have not entered your registry ID number into the chat box with your name, please do so now in order to receive credit for the training today through the PA Keys PD registry. Again, enter your name. We will get started in about 2 minutes. And we are thankful you are here today. So we look forward to recording your information so that you might receive credit for today. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to get started. For those who don't know me, I'm Rose Snyder. I am the Director of Member and Educational Services for the Pennsylvania Association for Education of Young Children, PANASY. And we are pleased to bring you this mental health mini-series, Who's Caring for the Caregiver? Today, we are very fortunate enough to have two wonderful women from the Pennsylvania Cooperative Extension with us to share information. And we are excited that they will be presenting to us. And just as a few reminders, this session does go until 3 p.m. today. And if you have not entered your name and registry ID number into the chat box, please do so that we have a record and can record your training into the PA Keys registry. This session is being recorded and will be posted to the PANASY website or a link thereof for future viewing. Credit will not be given post attendance of this event. So please be sure to give us your registry ID number if you are in the presence of the event today. So I am going to get started. Again, we are so glad you're here. Last week we were together and we did a screening of the mysteries of mental illness and then a question and answer panel. So for those who joined us, thank you. That session was not recorded, will not be available afterwards, but we are happy to have, as I said, Cynthia Pollock and Darlene Sanson with us today. Just a little bit about our outline for today. Just some background. We recognize that there's been a lot of stress on the whole world in relation to COVID and all the things that have been going. But as early childhood professionals, we continue to strive to serve children and families, even if we were doing it remotely or whether some of us were on the front lines and actually providing care during the entire outbreak of COVID. And we really just want to make sure that we pay attention to some of the things that are related to our own mental health and the mental well-being of those that we love and care for around us. And so we've invited these ladies to share with us today. And I first must apologize to Darlene because I realized that I don't have Darlene's name on there and I have Cynthia's name spelled very wrong. Which I just now noticed. So we will get started on our presentation today. Again, we are so excited to have you with us today. So without further ado, I am going to let Cynthia begin our session, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask Cynthia to share her screen. Cynthia has been in I don't know how long you've been in the cooperative extension world, but you've been a part of early childhood's world and training and professional development for many, many years, as has Darlene. And, you know, in the education world of training and education. And so we are so happy to have you as an expert in this, as a facilitator and trainer for mental health and mental health awareness. And so again, I'm going to stop my share now and I'm going to allow Cynthia to start her share.
Well, welcome everyone. And again, thanks Rose for having us here. So several weeks ago, I did a very short presentation from the ELRC here in Area 1, and Rose happened to be on that call with us. And I just was explaining a few things that Penn State has been doing, which led to us being invited today. So we certainly appreciate that. So we have been doing a lot of mental health awareness and mental health first aid. Cynthia and I have both become certified in mental health first aid through the National Behavioral Council. And we are offering a lot of different programs, which we'll talk to you in a few moments about. So Cynthia, you want to go ahead and advance the slides? So our goals for today are to analyze the challenges that we are facing and how we can start the conversation about the importance of mental wellness. We're hoping to examine the importance of recognizing and adjusting to the future, whatever that will hold for us. We're not sure at this point. And we also want to learn how to understand and accept those things that are not in our control. That's something that Cynthia and I talk about often, that both of us have that personality that, yes, we can be stressed, but we just know that there are going to be things out of our control and we just have to move on. And then we have to talk about ways to change our perspective to embrace that life that is worth living. Okay. So thinking about mental health, there are several mental health conditions very prevalent today. We know depression and anxiety are the most well-known. So even before the pandemic, we knew that it was safer to remain silent about all those stresses that were happening. We have to look at it, we have to think about it, but we really didn't let other people know about it. We have to think about, as of maybe last June, all the financial risk and the feelings of isolation that were the top threats to the employees in America. Those were really mental health concerns. And we knew that those mental health concerns were characterized by a lot of major changes. And since we weren't seeing all of our colleagues, we might not have noticed that, there were behavior changes, they were having trouble functioning at work, or we might not know that somebody was having trouble in school or with family and with their relationships, which we would have known about had we been able to see all of our colleagues. There is a high rate of stigma around mental health issues and speaking up. A lot of people are concerned about the economic stability. If we talk about it too much, we might not have our jobs. But if we really work on divulging some of our problems or the things that are happening to us, we know that it can increase trust between coworkers and that our spaces are much more safe. We don't want people to be struggling in silence. We want there to be a very open culture where employees really feel like they can bring themselves to work. So interference does not go away quickly. It lasts, very typically longer than typical emotions do. And we have to know what those reactions would be looking like. So if we look at things like the Harvard study, we can focus on the longevity and meaningful relationships and those social connections so that we can have a more positive impact on emotional, mental, and physical well-being. So trying to think about the steps that we could take to have a more normal conversation in our workplaces for this. So, we're very lucky to be part of the Penn State, group of people. Penn State has put a lot of financial resources into making the mental health first aid available at no cost to all of the employees in the system, really working on trying to get that out. And we've done a lot of things over the year to really try to help normalize that. Okay, next slide. So what can we do? When we look at mental health, it's the whole of the human being. If we look at this quote here, if you do not have mental health, there is no health. 5 simple ways to keep our body and mind healthy. So first of all is paying attention to our diet. And we all know that that was a struggle during COVID. But if we definitely put more plants and a little less meat into our diet, we know that we can be healthier. thinking about routine exercises. Sedentary routines are very harmful. And I know for myself, I had to walk every single day. If I'm not walking and we're glued to all of these Zoom meetings on our computer, it does bring your mental health down. You feel very isolated. Make sure that you get enough sleep, and the quality of sleep matters. So turning off all of the TVs and the radios and things like that, that a lot of us have gotten into the habit of trying to fall asleep to, just is not restful sleep. So making sure that that quality of your sleep, having a good mattress and a cool room, all of those things are very important. Keeping away from harmful substances, very, very important. We know that there has been a lot of substance abuse. We don't know the numbers yet of what happened during the pandemic, but we're sure to see some numbers coming out in the very near future. But really thinking about nicotine and alcohol and drugs and caffeine, as we get older, our bodies can't take all of that caffeine. So staying away from that as much as possible is really going to do a lot for our mental health. And then, as I said, staying socially connected. We put a big push on that during the pandemic to make sure that those people did connect, even if it was virtually through a phone call or through Zooms or chat meetings and things like that. I know that I practiced personally with my family many, many times because we knew we had to offer more Zooms. And I was really practicing how to flip things, but that was also a way to keep me connected to those family members who I could not see. When we look at mental health issues, there are a lot of questions that we can ask. So Cynthia looked at the mental health first aid 2020 edition for that assisting adults curriculum. And she found some questions that would like to ask you. So could you type into the chat if you have some thoughts on some of the answers to these questions? So how many people experienced a mental illness last year? And I can't see the chat because I'm watching other things. So let's see if we have some answers there. How many people do you think experienced a mental illness in the last year? Are there some answers there?
Yes, so some of our answers are 1 in 4, 50%. I assume the numbers are higher because of COVID, 40%, way too many to count, 50%.
So what they're looking at is, about 1 in 5 Americans have experienced some form of mental illness. So that 1 in 4 person was pretty on target there. In June, 40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance use. So that was a pretty high number. How many youth 6 to 17 experienced a mental health disorder? Go ahead and type that into chat.
%75%, 1 in 8, 50%.
Okay.
75, 35%, 45, 40.
Right. So that is actually 1 in 6 youth aged 6 to 17 in the United States experience a mental health disorder every year. That one, when we looked at that statistic, that was very scary to me. To think that, I have grandchildren in that age and they could be, experiencing those mental health disorders that we didn't even know about. Half of all lifetime mental illness begins by what age? And 75% by what age?
16. Half by 13. Age 10, 18. 12. 10 and 18.
Okay. So half of all the lifetime mental illness begins by age 14 and 75% by age 24. The average delay between onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment is how many years?
4, 5, 3, 4.
So that is actually much higher. That is about 11 years between the onset and treatment. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged what?
21, 13 to 18, 16 to 24, teens, 65.
Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 34 in the United States, and the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. More people suffer from, many people suffer from more than one mental disorder at any given time. Depressive illnesses tend to co-occur with substance misuse and anxiety disorders. And then the most common mental illness in the US are anxiety disorders, which affect about 40 million adults, or about 18% of our population. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Darlene, there's a question in the chat box that somebody's asking. How long is the average treatment for mild depression?
And so we're going to talk a little bit about depression now, or Darlene will be talking about depression, and it really depends on the individual, because to treat depression is sort of making behavior changes. And so sometimes it's, in less than a year, a person who has mild depression, with the help of counseling and or medication, then that depression can go away. And sometimes people who are feeling really depressed or sad find that our next training, those self-help skills, some of those things really help to alleviate eating well and sleeping well and taking care of ourselves, giving ourselves the grace that we give other people, help with mild depression. So they don't put an exact number on it, because it really depends on the individual and how the individual wants to make the changes, because you can stay in that depressive cycle if every day you wake up and the sun isn't shining and you go, oh my gosh, it's going to be a bad day. The sun's not shining. It's raining again. What will I do? Oh my gosh, I can't get outside with the kids today. It's going to be a horrible day. And so we can keep that. We can perpetuate that. Or we can say, wow, it's raining outside and it's warm. Let's just take our shoes and socks off and go splash in puddles. So depending on how we react to different things will really affect that time that depression hangs around for us. But certainly getting the right help, talking to the right people will certainly help that to go away sooner than later. Don't wait 11 years.
Thank you, Cynthia. She always has all the answers because she's been doing this much longer than I have. She's a good person to be working with. So we're looking at the next slide here with a very large graphic looking at the changes in the disorders that can occur. So we have to take a look at them individually. When we look at depression, it is a mood disorder, very persistent feeling of sadness and a loss of interest. So it can be called major depressive disorder for clinical depression, which affects how you feel, how you think, how you behave. And it can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. If you're severely depressed, you could have trouble doing normal day-to-day activities. And sometimes you don't even want to get up out of bed or feel like your life is worth living. It is normal to feel anxious from time to time. A lot of us have felt that if we have stress in our life. However, excessive ongoing anxiety and worry are very difficult to control, and they interfere with day-to-day activities. And so if you have that feeling, you might have a generalized anxiety disorder. Thinking about that. And We're noticing a lot of anxiety disorders. I am anyway, in a lot of young children. I have been actually doing some CDA visits again in the centers, and a lot of questions are coming up about the anxiety in young children. So it is important for us to notice that that is happening and to work with those families to try to decrease the anxiety in the children, because of course that increases the anxiety in our adults as well. Panic attacks can be a very sudden episode. It's intense fear. It triggers physical reactions when there isn't really any danger or apparent cause. For those people experiencing panic attacks, it can be very frightening. You might think you're losing control. I know that my sister thought that she was having a heart attack, but it was purely a panic attack for her. And sometimes people think, oh my gosh, I'm dying. And it's, again, panic attack that we have to learn to deal with. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition that's triggered by terrifying events, experiencing it or witnessing it. So we hear that from a lot of our veterans because they have experienced events that have caused those post-traumatic stress disorders to occur. It might be flashbacks, it might be nightmares, it might be anxiety. It might be constantly thinking about whatever that event was. And those people have a lot of difficulty adjusting and coping with what's happening in their real life. But again, if they have good self-care and they practice those techniques that have been recommended to them, then over time, they usually do get better. If symptoms get worse, last for years, things are not dealt with, and you cannot function day to day, it usually is a post-traumatic stress disorder. Then we have schizophrenia, again, a serious mental disorder, misinterpretation of reality versus what's happening normally. And we might see hallucinations, we might see delusions, a lot of disordered thinking or behaviors that are impairing their physical functioning daily. Some of that can be disabling. We are learning more and more about the non-suicidal self-injury, usually it's just self-injury, where we're deliberately harming our bodies by cutting or burning. It's typically not meant to be a suicide attempt, but really a way to cope with pain or anger or frustration, things that are happening in their lives. It might bring a momentary sense of calm or release of tension, but usually that's accompanied by guilt, shame, and the painful emotions often reoccur with them. If we don't see them as life-threatening in the beginning, or they're not intended as life-threatening, it can become more and more serious and even fatal if action hasn't taken to help with that situation. So next we're talking here about stress and really what we know about stress and what we don't know about stress really. So a lot of things that have happened in this pandemic time have caused the levels of stress by many of us to increase. But what really is stress, and how do I know if I'm experiencing stress? So it is simply the reaction to a challenge, our response to anything that threatens our survival. It can be, physical, emotional, financial, anything that's, survival related. For most of you on the call, it was, am I going to still have my business? Am I going to be able to reopen and care for these children in the near future? So really looking at what things were happening, both to our mind and our bodies, and what kind of actions we could take to combat some of those things that were happening. Not all stress is bad. Remember, you can be stressed planning a wedding or a birthday party, but those are very joyful occasions once we actually get to them. But we feel that anticipation and helps us to physically or mentally get ready for that. It's what keeps us busy. You know, I'm thinking about as you were reopening, you were very excited to be reopening and joining as families again. But, you know, it was very stressful trying to think about how many children could you accommodate, how many families. What was the financial implication of putting those mitigation pieces into place there? So if it's prolonged, you know, it can cause us a lot of distress. And that can also result in physical or emotional problems for there. So if our facility is isolated or you felt that you've been isolated, those of you who have been in family care, it probably caused you a lot more stress than you even thought about or wanted to deal with in many days. So I want you to think about how you react to stress. So thinking about physical signs of stress. Can you type into the chat again a couple ways that you know your body has reacted to stress? How does your body feel when you're stressed?
Actually, no, I'm in the middle of
Tired, tense,
online.
headache, tight chest, tired, sluggish, wanting chocolate, anxious, tense, migraines, depending on the level, sweaty, tingly, you eat more. Those are overeating, right? You can't sleep, your loss of focus, overwhelmed, feeling overwhelmed, crying, right? Sometimes just crying because you don't even know why. Headache, eating more, not sleeping. Working out, if it's not overworking out, is a good thing to help with the stress, right? Headaches. Thanks for those answers. Great input. Unable to rest and feeling angry. Yeah, sometimes lashing out, lashing out at people for no apparent reason.
I was going to say, I loved when you said chocolate because, you know, many of us know that. Those of you who might not know Cynthia and I, we've been doing a lot of Zooms. We both always have a little snack next to us when we are presenting. We might be taking a quick bite of a piece of candy or some fruit or something right before we present. So definitely we know that we have to have that just to keep our bodies in shape, to keep the sugar levels stable, to keep the hunger away from us, and to make sure that we don't have any issues as we're going. But I also recognize, Cynthia, that you said, you know, when we're thinking about our mind there, that anger and that irritation, that sadness and that crying are very prevalent for many of us when we are really feeling stressed. And, you know, we have to think about the behaviors that we want to help to combat that stress. So I heard you say something about exercise, as long as we're not over exercising and really beating up our bodies, but really thinking about the behaviors that we can turn to, that calling a friend, that reading, that calming music kind of thing, so that we're not overeating or yelling or very impatient. But once we can recognize symptoms of stress in ourselves, we can recognize them in everyone else, but sometimes we don't recognize them in ourselves, and we actually do see them in other people first and foremost. So making sure that you really know what are the signs and how can I recognize and what do I need to do in order to function productively so that I don't let that stress get to me. So we're looking at a lot of physical signs and symptoms, many of which you have just gone over, Cynthia, as they typed into the chat. So we're looking at the rapid heartbeats, the shortness of breath or the fast breathing, upset stomachs, lack of energy, overeating, constipation, headaches. All of those things can be severe physical signs, or sometimes just hey, you know what, this isn't normal for me. I should really check out what's going on with me. And perhaps if we're really feeling stressed, maybe it is time to see a professional or talk to a professional about that. So when I'm looking at behavioral and psychological signs and symptoms of stress, I'm looking at crying spells. Somebody said, crying quickly, withdrawal from others. So we might not have noticed that as much during the pandemic when we weren't seeing other people. As we begin to regain our close to normal lives, we will be able to see that if somebody suddenly does not come back to the workforce or just decides to stay at home, that might be a time when you need to reach out. Or somebody who's starting to neglect responsibilities, somebody who loses interest in their personal appearance. Thinking about motivation. We all have to be motivated to do things, we know that. But if they can't seem to get that back, or they're moving very slowly, or you might notice that many people, because they did stay at home for so long, might have increased the use of drugs and alcohol in their lives. And you might notice that as we return to the workplace. Well,
Darlene,
Mhm.
somebody had asked in the chat too, statistically where our numbers came from, and most of them came from right before or right at the beginning of COVID. But what we do know, especially because we keep putting up use of drugs and alcohol, we do know that there has been a 40 to 50% increase in drug and alcohol use during COVID from pre-COVID numbers. And so we do know that a lot of people, have started to self-soothe, right? Or help their stress and anxiety by, by the use of drugs or alcohol. And the one thing that I kept questioning that I still haven't seen in research is, they saw an increase in the number of people buying alcohol at, I don't even know what they're called in Pennsylvania, alcohol stores. I don't drink, so I don't know what that's called. But then we don't know if it really was an increase or if, since they weren't going out to drink after work or to bars on Friday night or whatever, if they were just supplementing that at home. So I'd like to see some research on that, but based on self-report and other research, those numbers have gone up. Sorry, Darlene.
No, that's okay. Like I said, I wasn't watching the chat because I was trying to watch the notes here to make sure I'm talking about what I'm supposed to be doing. And it'll be interesting, Cynthia, I think as we see that bill passed to continue the takeout beverages from the restaurants and things like that, if they, add that amount of alcohol sold as takeout to the liquor stores or, whatever, if they can pull those statistics together. But again, in research, we always know that it takes about a year or so to catch up the numbers, to catch up to what happened the year before. We're looking at some of the psychological signs and symptoms, sadness, anxiety, guilt, anger, mood swings. I see we have quilt here.
Yes, I see that again.
Self-corrected itself again. We've already corrected this once when we looked at it. Feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, a lot of irritability, impaired memory and concentration, and indecisiveness and confusion. Again, some of those psychological signs, it's very important to know what the person has normally been like and compare it to what they're currently acting like, taking into consideration, they might have been isolated, or they might have been living with other family members, not being able to get back to their homes, kind of thing. They might have aged and have some other things, but really looking at all of these symptoms again, and signs, and trying to decide, when do I need to reach out and get some help for them.
And for some people, that reaching out is, talking to a friend, either, like I've been noticing that and whatever any of these, behavior, psychological or physical signs are, or to, call your family doctor, call and just say, I've been noticing this, what do you think? is always a good step, but having a person that you can confide in to talk to, because maybe, they're noticing it too, and they just haven't said anything. So to be able to say, I really have noticed that you've been a little more anxious, or you're quite a bit more irritable. You used to not be so irritable. And then, reaching out. And we always suggest, if you do have a family doctor, that you reach out to them. And so many places now, even the urgent cares have, if you don't have a regular doctor, even the urgent cares have telemed, teledocs. And I know that in something I just read recently from Panacea, it talked about that teledoc opportunities. So you might want to look at some of those recent articles that Rose sends out, because I know I read it just recently in something Rose sent out. So Rose, go ahead.
You are right, Cynthia. We do on our Shared Source Pennsylvania have an opportunity for you to engage in a low cost health program through telemed. And you can get, I believe the individual cost, and it would be for your family, is $10 a month, which you have access to, getting sort of a very reduced rate. So you can check it out on Shared Source Pennsylvania. If you have any questions, Tracy, if you don't mind, can you put my email address in the chat box? And you can contact me, and I am more than happy to connect you, or go on to Shared Source Pennsylvania and become a user of sharedsourcepa.org.
Thank you.
Back to the show.
Yeah. And I know that I just got something from my Medicare plan, because I'm old, but it did also, there was a whole little checklist of things, and there was actually incentive to really look at your mental health. And, if you completed their survey or whatever on mental health, then you were eligible for a $10 gift card. I haven't done it because it just came yesterday, but, there really is a lot of incentive for people to look at their mental health and, really examine how different it is from, previously till now during this pandemic time. So we do encourage everybody to really, think about your own mental health. We always talk about you can't care for others if your own mental health is unstable. So you want to be a good caregiver. It is important to care for yourself. So we're going to take a couple moments here to look at a short video and really talk about how stress affects our bodies.
Maybe we're going to. Maybe we're not. And now I did something and you can't see my whole screen.
Cynthia, if you copy and paste that link into your browser and then just share your screen using the browser, you should be able to show it.
Okay.
Nothing like the pressure of 100 people watching you do this.
Exactly.
I say that because I've been there.
Oh,
Not sure what went wrong there. Hey, Cynthia, would you like me to try?
yeah. Can you try?
Yeah, I'll try and you work on yours, okay? You continue talking and I'll.
Well, and we've always laughed because when we're doing the mental health first aid and even our mental wellness mini series, technology has been our friend some days, and 10 minutes later, the technology, even though we've practiced it and tried it, decides to fail.
Okay, I believe I have it up here. Let me share my screen quickly. Give me 1 second. See if I can make this full screen.
Cramming for a test, trying to get more done than you have time to do. Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous, but when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the
Rose, can
Yes.
you stop sharing a minute and
Yes.
then check the box? When you go to share the screen in the bottom left-hand corner, it'll say share sound.
Are you not hearing it?
Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were not hearing it.
It was very, very low.
It should actually be.
Do you have that little box in the bottom left-hand checked?
Yeah, it is.
Then you might need to raise the volume on your
On my
where your little
computer.
microphone is. If you click the carrot.
Let's try. I tried that and that didn't work previously. So let me try again here. Do
Thank
you want me to
you.
restart it?
Jennifer said she could hear it.
Okay,
Somebody else said check the volume on your own computer. So go ahead.
okay.
Thank you.
Should be going.
increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain-gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut's sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with energy-dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases, such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury, but chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal. Want to live a long life? You may have to curb your chronic stress. That's because it has even been associated with shortened telomeres, the shoelace tip ends of chromosomes that measure a cell's age. Telomeres cap chromosomes to allow DNA to get copied every time a cell divides without damaging the cell's genetic code, and they shorten with each cell division. When telomeres become too short, a cell can no longer divide, and it dies. As if all that weren't enough, chronic stress has even more ways it can sabotage your health, including acne, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, headaches, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and irritability. So, what does all this mean for you? Your life will always be filled with stressful situations, but what matters to your brain and entire body is how you respond to that stress. If you can view those situations as challenges you can control and master, rather than as threats that are insurmountable, you will perform better in the short run and stay healthy in the long run.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you. So that video was just a very quick look at what is happening to that stress in your body. And if you heard them talking about the stress affecting your waistline, you can definitely use that. If you've put on those COVID pounds and tell them that you were stressed, during that time. But we do know that many of us either, when we're stressed, either overeat or undereat during that situation. So we're going to look at how our body responds and how we respond. So thinking about, the cortisol there, and how it's affecting our body, think about how you respond. Do you struggle to control your thoughts or your feelings or those body sensations? Do you get mad? Do you get so busy that you don't notice it? Or do you eat, and not even notice that you've eaten, the whole plate of fruit or something that's sitting next to you? And then do you blame yourself for thinking or feeling that way as you go, through that? So thinking about how do I manage it? How do I avoid the blame that's happening? If you've answered yes to all of those questions, that can be a big problem for you. So picture in your mind a time you experienced stress and, really felt that stressful body reactions or those feelings or the thoughts that were coming into your mind in the last 4 days. So how did you try to respond? Did you try to control what was happening? Did you manage it? Did you avoid it? Or were you experiencing a lot of blame of yourself? If you want to type into the chat for a moment. So I want you to think about, how do you cope with those unwanted thoughts or feelings?
Some of those positive things that you did when your mind starts racing, when you start having negative thoughts, when you're blaming yourself. So deep breathing exercises can stop that. Taking deep breaths, medication, belly breathing, meditation, listening to music, depending on the level, manage it mostly in other situations or avoiding it. Reading and praying, exercising, lots of knitting, singing, long walks, massage therapy, praying, walking away from it, working in your garden, sometimes just asking for help. Absolutely. When you're feeling like that, just say, I can't do this by myself. Can you help me today? Venting to someone that you can trust. Absolutely. When I'm in school, studying actually helps. Gardening and music. And we know that connecting with nature, there's a real chemicals are really stimulated in your body when you're out in nature and you're gardening or you're walking in nature. Making those connections outside is proven scientifically to have very positive effects. You learn strategies to stop, think, and choose. Absolutely. Thank you. taking a walk, right? So those are really, really good things to help with those unwanted thoughts. And that, stop about it, stop, think about what you're thinking about, and then think about the change that you can make. Sewing and crafts and listening to music, reading, talking with your friends. That's right, making those connections. We know that not only for children, but for adults, those connections are vital. And I read a research article today about hugging. And so if you get one hug a day, that helps you just a little bit. But if you get 12 hugs a day, you will actually increase the positive chemicals in your brain and actually have much less stress and much less mental health struggles. So I know we're not supposed to get close to people and we're not supposed to touch anyone, but heck, if those hugs can help you feel better, go for the hug and wash your hands when you're finished, is what I would say. Totally agree for gardening, and gardening with your children is absolutely a wonderful idea. So thank you for those answers.
And we want to make sure that we are not so hard on ourselves. I heard a lot of those comments. So it is difficult to control or stop our thoughts. So don't beat yourself up. When we can't control what's happening there. Just remember, take a deep breath, as Cynthia always says. So I like this quote here: if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. Really trying to think. So think about the expression, I have a lot on my plate. And I'd like you to just pull out a piece of paper, or even in your thoughts here, write all over your plate or your piece of paper in any way, shape, or form that you want. Draw it, write it, sentences, words, symbols, a little photo, something like that. And think about the things that stress you out. And then we're going to give you about 2 minutes to just, jot all those things down. And then we're going to talk about it for a moment. So if you want to just take a quick piece of paper, jot down everything you can in about 2 minutes. What stresses you? I know when I go to the doctors, I always just tell them, my husband, he's my stressor, and I know that. So I just put that as the big word out there. About 1 more minute. Now I'd like you to circle all the things that you put on that sheet or on that plate that you don't have any control over. Circle everything you don't have any control over. is there anything, or what did you notice, I guess, on that? Are there things that you didn't circle, or did you circle everything? If you want to type it in.
We circled it all. It was hard to choose. Some of them, circled most of them. Circled everything and can't control any of it. Circled many. About half of them. Most of them circled most, many. I did not circle everything. I circled all of them, most of them. Most of them I can't control. Most of them circled them all.
Yes,
So,
what I'm looking at is that, you know, the things that stress us the most of them, we really don't have any control over. You know, we can't solve everything here, and we can't change a lot of those situations. So that's where the acceptance comes in. You know, we accept it and we change how we choose to handle the situation. So if I make acceptance part of my daily routine or my mindset, it can save me a lot of time and energy. And I focus on solutions instead of the problems all the time. We're there. So Cynthia, do you want to move on?
all right, now is this where I take over?
This is where you take
Right.
over.
So we talked about acceptance and accepting, you know, you're looking at your plate, you're looking at your piece of paper, and you wrote down all of those things, and you realized that, wow, there's a whole lot here that I can't do, you know, anything about, but I can accept that I can't do anything about that, and I can look at it differently. So acceptability is a requirement, because change is a constant and it's inevitable, and we must be flexible to succeed. And as early educators, I think, you know, part of your job description is flexibility. But I love the book, How Full Is Your Bucket, you know, and sometimes your buckets just get so full with all that negative, yucky stuff. You know, you just have to, you know, let it dump out and refill it with better stuff. And so adaptability is having ready access to a range of behaviors that enable us to shift and experiment as things change, right? So this may be working right now, but in another week, it's not working. You know, right before Darlene and I got on this, we got on to a meeting, and I don't know how many of you just love going to Ag Progress Days there out in State College Way, but, you know, first it was going to be virtual, and now we can do it live, but we can only have so many people, and we can't, you know, hand out our food after we do food demonstrations, but all that could change by August. And, you know, so always being able to, you know, circle that. And I see somebody wrote that all the things that you put down in your life that stress you, that you have no control over, is what we asked you to circle. And if you didn't circle anything, then there's nothing wrong with you. It just means that you have a very productive mindset, and that you're able to see those stressors as things that, as things that you can have power over, and that you can be successful at changing. So thank you for adding that. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means that, you know, you're adaptable, right? You can have a range of behaviors that enable you to shift what is going on in your life. And so one of the things that we look at is, this comes from the parental resilience part of Strengthening Families. So if any of you took Strengthening Families, this will look familiar to you. And it's asking, what does resilience look like to you? And so on your screen, you can see that there are building blocks there. there's take action, there's problem solve, there's gather resources and make positive choices, and your belief system, coping strategies, hope, acknowledging feelings, communication skills, and recognizing challenges. And so as you look at this, and there's some blank boxes there, you might have other things, but as we look at resilience and what resilience looks like for you, it does not look the same for everybody. And so if you have a piece of paper in front of you and you wrote those words down, what are the 4 things that you would put on the bottom, the 4 things that you have to have in place to be resilient? And then the next 3 things that you would have, and the next 2 things, and that last thing on the top. But what is your foundation for you personally, for resilience? It should look different. If we did this in a classroom and we were all together and you'd be peeking over at your neighbor's, piece of paper, theirs may look very different than yours. So what are the things that you'd put in your bottom row? What are those foundational pieces for resiliency? Resiliency is built on these things, and there's many ways for us to gauge how we handle the challenges and the stresses that we face. And this resilience block illustration shows a variety of foundational approaches, as well as some skills and actions that we may take to help build our resilience. So as you look at this and you're mapping your own resilience, what are your 4 blocks? Some of the blocks represent skills and others represent beliefs and others represent actions. What do you think would be your 4 blocks on the bottom? Would you share them in the chat box? Faith, recognizing challenges, gathering resources, and making positive choices. Thank you. Faith, family, humor, and planning. Moving on, your friends and family. Positive thoughts, praying and family, family, humor, planning and friends. Patience, taking a deep breath, gathering information, planning for next steps. Humor, faith, grace for others, recognizing challenges, communication skills, patience, acknowledging feelings, communication skills, coping strategies, and problem solving, your belief system, the actions that you would take, problem solving and good choices, taking things not so seriously.
Family on here,
faith,
lot of family.
Lots of family, friends, communication, actions, problem solving. A lot of those are nice to have, at the bottom. And it doesn't matter what your bottom is. Your bottom is your foundation on building the resiliency that you need to be successful, right? The resiliency for you to overcome that stress, overcome that, too much stress leads to, depression. So if you're mildly depressed, looking back at that resiliency, what can you talk about? And I know next week, your whole discussion is going to be on resiliency. So this is just a quick little peek into that bounce back, that resiliency, right? And so what everyday actions are easiest for you to support and implement? And which everyday actions are really hard for you to implement? when we're thinking about how can we build this resiliency, then what's going to be really easy for us and what will be hard for us. And then whatever your current role is, and that might be family member, that might be early educator, that might be your second job of making coffee at Wawa, I don't know, but whatever your current role is, what would you need to happen to be able to support and implement the actions that you put on your little resiliency pyramid? And for those have implemented some of those everyday actions already, have you seen any, change in what, by making those little changes for yourself? How did that change your big picture? So some things that I know that you'll be talking about next week, but things to, think about. And people said, give grace to other people. And I think part of that giving grace is that being empathetic, right? Coming alongside that person, even if it is just to come alongside them and sit quietly, a skill that's a little bit hard to learn sometimes. So here's a fun little activity that we're going to think about, and looking at this little fun exercise might be, quite revealing, or might be a good discussion starter. So if you are back in your early childhood setting or going back, maybe you'll do this activity, suggest it for a staff meeting, or do it with the teachers you work with in the classroom. So, so each of these, we're going to pretend these shapes are all around the room. And so we have a box, a triangle, a rectangle, a circle, and a squiggle. And this shape activity comes from some research done by Dr. Susan Dellinger, and she's the author and creator of Psychogeometrics, the system developed in 1978. And it's a unique method for analyzing human personality on the basis of the preference for the shape. And so this presentation has been presented worldwide, just in case you're thinking, like, what is she doing with us this afternoon? So what I'd like you to do is choose a shape that represents you at work. And after you have chosen that shape, then I would like to ask you to put that shape in the box, in the chat box, sorry. A squiggle and a circle and a squiggle for sure. Circle, rectangle, circle, circle, triangle, squiggle, triangle, circle, squiggles. We have lots of squiggly people here today.
And a lot of circles.
And a lot of circles. So now if we were in a classroom setting, two triangles together make a diamond, LOL. Absolutely, squiggles, circles. And so then my question to you is to think about, why did you choose the shape, and how does that shape represent you at work? Okay,
I see focus from beginning to end. Can I be a squiggly circle? I'm all over the place. A circle.
That's right, a circle's never ending.
Makes me feel that I'm able to deal. It's squiggle is flexible. The circle never ending. There's no beginning or end. Evenly distributed. just goes on and on. Trying to meet all facets of the position. Circle because in our children got us going in circles. Inclusive, I chose a triangle because it's 3 aspects of my job.
And something about being very active, right?
Right.
That squiggle is being very active.
And it means something different every day, somebody put.
I can't be all over
Don't-
I can be all over the place. Circles roll along and they adapt to the needs of the organization. You guys have lots of good insight and thought. This really is a lot of fun to do. So some of the results from the research were that if you picked square, and I think I didn't see any squares, it says based on being a square, you're a hard worker, dependable, detail-oriented, collector of data, likes to work independently. I also don't think I saw too many triangles. That's upward, mobile, shows leadership qualities, energetic, task and result oriented. I think I saw a few rectangles, and that's a shape in transition. So you can't decide what shape you want to be. You're an explorer and a risk taker. And then if you picked circle, so about half of you picked circle, interested in harmony and wants people to feel good about themselves. You're a nurturer and a nurturer and a people pleaser. And I think for our profession, you're right on. And squiggles, innovative, unique, can be a bit disorganized, a multitasker, likes doing several things at once. And so we hope that this exercise just gets you laughing and you know, talking by via the chat box to think about who we are and whether or not there is validity in the shape-focused research is less relevant than how it encourages us to look at ourselves, and a good starting point just to you know, think about our own resiliency. And if you're thinking about maybe the children in your classroom or the families that we work with or your own families, and figuring out what would you pick for them, or just asking them, you know, for your young children, you could hang these shapes up and just ask them, you know, what shape do you think you are? And if you're not doing a shape of the week and you've not all just done rectangle, you know, where they'd automatically pick that because that's what they just learned. But, you know, just a fun way to look at, you know, where we are and how we feel and why we picked, you know, why we picked that. And some of your definitions of why you picked being a circle or being a squiggle was actually exactly what the research found and pointed out. So thanks for participating in that activity. I can't wait till we can start doing these things face to face. So next question. In the chat box, share with us, how do you respond to your own negative thoughts? Whether it's I'm so bad at this, or I can't believe I just did that.
Change my perspective.
Change your perspective. You go for a walk. So does walking, and I'm not putting you on the spot, Cynthia, but does walking help you change your negative thoughts, or is there more to getting that? Sometimes you push them down, right? And turn them into a positive thought. Sometimes you think of positive things. going to the gym, right? Just get away from it to get it out of your head. Walk, 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 and talk to family and friends. Trying to focus on the scripture and what that says and what it means and the worth that you have, right? You had the tough year to overcome. Let me go back up. That moved away for me too fast. Oh, I lost it. Journaling and praying, taking deep breaths, doing something that you can focus on and accomplish, right? I love my to-do list because I love crossing something off. Even if there's 10 things on my to-do list, if I can cross one of them off, I'm like, wow, I accomplished it today, something, right? Talk to your coworkers. After a few minutes, you just tell yourself to stop. That's right. And take that deep breath and move on. That's that catch it, catch it, stop it, change it. Somebody put that in earlier. Absolutely. Some of those great things. Absolutely. Counting the blessings that we have, right? Seeing that, every day there's something that we can be happy about.
I think we all want to talk to somebody's fiance who's the psychotherapist sometimes.
Reading your Bible and praying in Christian music. I try to meditate and focus on thoughts, imagining myself empty in a white room until you can refocus. Hey, that's a neat idea. So when we're talking about those thoughts and how we respond to ourselves, lots of good, Stacy, I'm right there with you. When we're thinking about those thoughts and about how difficult sometimes it is to control or stop that negative thinking, really those conscious efforts that you make will really help you change to look at that as a positive situation. And, for some of us, that's much easier, than others. And sometimes people get upset with us folks who can see something positive in every situation, and people who just can't do that. They'll get angry with you and you're like, why are they angry at me? Like this is working, this is okay, we can get through this together. But certainly friends and talking to other people and trying to figure out other people, right? Sometimes that is so hard to do because, sometimes we want them to change. But as you all have taken all those, cajillions of behavior classes, right now we're talking about mental wellness, right? But if we want to see change in behavior, you have to draw a circle around yourself and know the only person that you can change is the person standing inside that circle, right? And so if you want somebody else's, behaviors to change, you have to change how you think about that person or think about the behaviors that they do. And as soon as you start changing the thoughts on how you think about that, then all of a sudden that behavior isn't so overwhelming. So whether it's within yourself or within somebody else, just examining that, seeing everything one way, as one way or the other. And sometimes it's seeing it not as this way or that way, but maybe a combination of those things. So excellent thoughts and ideas there.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Maria indicated that when she remembers that what helps her actually helps her to move on as well. The idea of remembering.
Absolutely. That sometimes that is wonderful. Thank you for seeing that. Though my chat box is, so tiny and things are flying by. So thank you, Rose. And so we know that a great way for us to get mental wellness is by helping other people. So that when we start to help other people, when we start to sit down and listen to them, we're able to actually feel better and grateful about, the things that we have. And so the one thing to do is to really reach out and help other people. Do service projects. Like, we don't do that already every day, but how we help other people. Even if it is that parent who comes in late yet again, and I'm assuming that most of you guys are back to work in some capacity at this point, and you still have that parent who comes in late, we don't know why they're coming in late, and we can judge them. But, the one thing to do for that parent is saying, wow, you just seem like you are so rushed. Is there something I can do to help? Just by asking that question, they're going to think, wow, she noticed. Not that, I can't believe you're late again, you're the last parent here. Doesn't build those connections, right? And so helping people just by changing that. Earlier in our discussion, we talked about communication, or people were putting that in. And so just rephrasing our statement, even if our head is thinking, I can't believe she's late again, just turning it around like, wow, you always seem so rushed. We have no idea what kind of supervisor that person has, or, if they only have the 10 minutes between work and children, and life is so overwhelming that they drive slower, or they stop and they pick up that, for me, it's a fountain soda at, I don't know, Sheetz or Wawa, whatever country you live in this great state of Pennsylvania, and maybe that means that I'm late to pick up my child, but it means that I might be a better mom because I stopped and gave myself that 2 minutes to just take a deep breath and, have a little. Now, Darlene said caffeine's bad, but, have a little caffeine just so I can make it through the rest of the day with my child. And so active listening is all part of that, is all part of that communication, right? And listening. The most important skill is to listen, really listen to people. A lot of you said, you go and you talk to your friends, or you talk to your family members. And I'm sure that if you open up to them, then they open up to you. So to use your empathy and to truly listen for the feelings. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply, right? Stephen Covey said that. And so if we listen to understand, this active listening continuum is a tool that Michigan State University Extension put out on advancing decisive conversations and providing better understanding between people when they're having this conversation. So by asking, when a conversation starts, when someone is invited to say something through voice or another mode, and then probe or guessing at a way to gently gather more information, and then attending to paying attention and noticing those things in that conversation, noticing those signals, both linguistically and non-linguistically. So what is their body language saying? How, how is that body language, speaking to you? And then restating when someone says something to you, restating is repeating what you think they said, right? Paraphrasing is using your own words to restate what the speaker said. We often ask children to do this. Can you tell me what I just said to you, right? We want them to be able to share back what they have, what you've said to them to get, did they really understand what I just said? And I find that often I will say something and I can tell by the work that I get back that they didn't understand what I said. So, sometimes having them or you paraphrase in that conversation and then summarize, adding that emotion expressed by that the person who spoke, and then reframing just means to state it in an unbiased term or a neutral way of what one thinks the speaker really wants, right? So when we're doing this active listening, when we're trying to engage in conversation, when we're concerned about how those people around us are feeling, when we're really, really listening, part of the mental health first aid class that we teach, the second letter is L, listening non-judgmentally and really listening and hearing what the people are saying. Don't be listening to try to come up with an answer for them. Listen and repeat back to them. And when you repeat back and they say something, now you begin that, that give and take, that back and forth play. So getting that active listening into part of your mental wellness as you're talking to people, as they're listening to you and as you're listening to them. Some of the phrases that you might use when you're actively listening to somebody, right? I can see that this current situation is hard for you. What changes would you like to see, right? And somebody yesterday in a class that I attended said that, COVID has been so stressful and negative, and somebody else said it's only stressful and negative if you let it be stressful and negative. And, finding out, all of the positives that have come from this. Our ability to meet with people all over the state by just calling a Zoom, holding a Zoom class. We would never have been able to reach, I think at one point, it looks like there's 71 people, in this class. In a face-to-face class, we could never have 71 people. And because of COVID, we're now reaching all of you. Another thing that you can do if you're actively listening, I'm eager to help you. And I know that you're going through some tough challenges. Tell me what I can do to help. Usually when you say that, the person's response is really something you can do. Somebody once said, "Oh, I'm not asking that. What can I do to help? What if they say something I can't do?" Well, then you say, I can't do that, but I know somebody who can, and we're all here working together. That I hear you're saying, right? That repeating. They say something and you're repeating back. I hear you're saying this in case that really wasn't what they're saying. It sounds like you are thinking that, right? So getting that active listening, getting those phrases back, having some of those ideas. And thank you for all your kind words in the chat box. And then stressful situations and what do I do? So here are some suggestions on what to do in stressful situations. Comments that you can make while you're listening and supporting a person that you're hearing. And so I know that several early educators are in similar situations. So when somebody comes to you, you know, I know that there's several educators that are in this situation, and every situation's a little bit different. You know, help me to understand. So everybody's perspective on what's going on inside their early childhood program is a little bit different, you know, from another program, where they're located, what transportations are still available, all those kinds of things. And have you thought about, right? So if somebody comes to you, have you thought about this or this? You know, give them those options. And I could maybe help you with, you know, if there's something that you could do. And I think that if we, right, together, getting them to buy into that change or changing this stressful situation, this new idea might, and what do you think, right? So always giving them that opportunity to be engaged in the decision. Don't say, when this happened to me, this is what I did, and expect it to work, right? But this idea might, you know, what do you think about that? And then write down some of the pros and cons, right? In a stressful situation, in a situation where you're not sure how to respond, you know, what are some of those pros and cons that that you could write down? In this situation, here's the pros and here's the cons. If I make this change, what could be the pros? What could be the cons? And so taking time when you're feeling stressed to list the pros and cons about choices you might make. When you're thinking about, you know, being at work, what are some of those pros and cons? And then sharing those ideas with, you know, with families, because they're all in the same boat. Everything, you know, has rocked, and the reaction to the little people that you're dealing with and the reaction that the families are dealing with, you know, you're going to see some, if you're just starting back up, some unique behaviors, not only in your children, but in other staff people and other parents. So as we start to come here to an end, we want to end on that positive note, right? That hope is the answer. That hope is what we feel when things in life are worth living, and that our work is worth doing. And hope is what we have when we have a positive relationship with our own existence. It is the deepest of the three emotions, and happiness and optimism can't exist without hope. So when you're looking at those three emotions, happiness, optimism, and hope, hope can't exist without happiness and optimism, and happiness and optimism can't exist without hope. So we want you to be hopeful and have hope, and you know that that hope makes things possible for you. When hope exists, we engage with our environment more. We give more of ourselves to what we do, as does everyone else around us. Hope engages our creativity and our problem-solving skills. It is a factor in our ability to appreciate ourselves and others, and our ability to be grateful for our lives. Another quote says, hope creates higher levels of dopamine and endorphins and other neurochemicals, which promote well-being and the energy for living. And that hope recognizes our interdependency with our families, culture, society, and our environment. So being hopeful, having hope. And then in order to be an effective part of a hopeful world, there's certain things that you need to do regularly, right? So you need to conduct a hope audit about your life and how are you doing in your health, in your work, and in your relationships. And then you need to take care of yourself. Early on, Darlene said one of the most important things that we can do is to take care of ourselves so we can take care of those around you. And you have to have a stress reduction strategy. And a lot of you had some really good things on what you do when you are stressed. And then you have to create hopeful relationships. And learning to forgive, right? This has been such a stressful year and a half. And people have said some really dumb things, whether it be on social media or in a Zoom meeting or you know, in some kind of chat world, you know, but we really need to learn to forgive. And we need to develop a daily journal writing habit that helps you to let go of negative experiences and emotions, even if it is in, you know, just on your lesson plan or just in, you know, on a sticky note someplace. Just write something down that helps you let go of that negative stuff. And then again, helping others see the best in themselves and notice their desire to make meaningful contributions and to help them find their path to becoming hope makers for themselves and for others. And you know, I grew up in New York. I went to schools in New York. I was a teacher in New York City for a while. And I always said that the people that you needed to be friends with in a school are the janitor and the secretary. They're the two most important people ever in a school building. And, you know, some people don't even know who the custodian in their building is or who that person is who does all that stuff behind the scenes. But when you can thank those people that are unrecognized often, that really, you know, it builds them up so they can help, you know, so many other people. So think about those people in your life who just do things and it's just done, and, you know, recognize them for it. You know, I'm so appreciative that, you know, my daughter's home from college, and when she sees the garbage needs taken out, she just does it, not because I've asked her. And I sometimes forget to say, you know, thanks for doing that for me. You know, like I appreciate those, you know, those little things. The superintendent secretary that has gotten me in closed doors many times. Yes, you know, you have to know who is that important person for you. So the superintendent secretary, you know, if that's the person, absolutely. So this, I'm hoping, will work. And this is just a little perspective on the difference that you can make.
Cynthia, can you turn it up a little bit?
Did that change anything, Darlene? Oops, sorry. And so this is an ancient Indian or Chinese story just about, when people are feeling that, they're not as good as somebody else, think about all the ways that they make a difference without they make a difference without really even knowing that they're making that difference. And so, looking at how the crack pot didn't think that they were very good, but the pot that had, no cracks in it didn't grow the flowers along the path and didn't have something to share and bring somebody to smile. And so that was the end of our presentation, and then just a little bit of our marketing. At Penn State Extension, we do have a mental health first aid course. It's 8 hours long, 2 hours you do pre-work online, and then we're doing it virtually. We do it in 2 3-hour sessions, and that is for adults. Anybody who is an adult who works with adults, really neat. And then mental health first aid for adults working with youth is a mental health class, and it identifies understanding and responding to signs of mental illness and substance use disorders in our youth. And it is for people who work with children and adolescents ages 6 to 18 who may be developing a mental health or a substance use problem, and how to connect them with appropriate care. We do a mental wellness series, and they're running often. It is also recorded and up online, but looks at a lot of the things we've incorporated today. And we also do any part of those. And yes, we can send out, I can give that information to Rose, and she can send out the links to register for the mental health first aid, any one of those classes. And then as Penn State Extension, if you want to stay connected and find other webinars or training sessions that are going on, you can sign up at extension.psu.edu/health webinars. As soon as you log in to Penn State Extension, it says get connected. And if you want to find out any more information about Penn State Extension, you go in and you pick what you're interested in. And then if something is coming up on that topic, you'll get an email. This is our entire mental health first aid team at Penn State Extension. So you probably, some of you would recognize Jackie's name, Denise's name, Darlene's name, and my name, and the other people are 4-H educators, and they work on our intergenerational team as well. And then, of course, the university's committed to equal access. Rose,
Cynthia,
yes.
I also put our emails into the chat if somebody needs to
Awesome.
additional information on those webinars.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Darlene and Cynthia. We appreciate it a great deal. We are going to, give me 1 second here. I'm going to share my screen again, and I will pick up from there as we close out our session today. And hang on 1 second. I can actually see this tiny little, nope, wrong one. Sorry. There we go. So this session today was brought to you by PennACE with our supporters, the Penn State Cooperative Extension and the Devereaux Foundation, Devereaux Center for Resilient Children. And we just want to make sure that you are aware of PennACE. PennACE is a membership organization. And although this session was brought to you free today, It may not always be free, and being a member gives you an edge to joining us for all kinds of things that we do. Some of the wonderful things that we do are advocate for you. PNACE was a vital instrument in helping to secure funding for you through our advocacy efforts and our outreach coordinators and our advocacy team, who works on 2 significant campaigns that we address. One is Pre-K for PA, you may have heard of, and Start Strong PA. And those are both advocacy campaigns that help us to reach out to legislators through your stories, through your work. And by doing that, to inform and educate people about the need for high quality, accessible, and funded early childhood education for all children. Because really, don't all children deserve the very best that we have to offer them? And part of the ways that we do that and sustain the work that we do is through our membership. So if you want to make a difference in children's lives today, become a member of our organization. We have affordable membership from $30 up to $150 per year. And quite frankly, $30 a year is less than a cup of coffee a week. So I think you could probably figure that out. So again, our partners, Penn State Cooperative Extension, they have shared with you the things that they do. The Devereaux Foundation, Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health Center for Resilient Children. They will be presenting our session next week with Nefertiti Ponier, and she will be bringing Building Your Bounce strategies, simple strategies for a resilient you. As Cynthia and Darlene shared today, there are techniques and things that we all need to have so that we can be that resilient person and can face those challenges, because challenges are part of life. And it's not just being able to accept those challenges, but how do you bounce back from those challenges? If you've never heard Nefertiti speak, you are in for a treat. This woman is dynamic, and all of our speakers are, and she just has a way of joking and really bringing it all home. So you'll want to be here for our session next week. If you haven't registered, the reminder will go out this afternoon to people, and you can register for that session as well. So with that being said, thank you all. And I'm going to stop my screen share. Did you all see those things, or did I not? Did you all see those slides? Okay.
Yes, we did.
Maybe there for a minute when I went in there and I was like, wait a minute, did I not show them? So I just want to say thank you for being here today. If you haven't put your registry ID in the chat box, please do so, or send that to Tracy Weaver. She had put those out. She also put in the chat box the Pre-K for PA, the Start Strong, and the PNACE information. Again, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Are there anybody have any questions that they want to ask? We do have a few minutes before the end of the quote 3 o'clock. So if there's anybody who would like to ask questions of these wonderful ladies, certainly feel free to raise your hand, and Kevin will unmute you. If not, thank you for joining us. We'll stay on in case there are questions. Thank you for the kind words. We have lots of people in the chat box saying thank you. See you next week. Great, looking forward to it. Thank you, Shelley. Kathleen, Rhonda, thank you, Margot. Doreen, Chelsea, Lori, thank you all. Dr. Dickerson, thank you. Looks like we don't have any questions. That's good. That means that you guys were very comprehensive in your training. Lots of wonderful information there.
Oh, and when we teach, we both try to jump in to give information as we see,
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Or type into the chat as we saw them. So there was a lot of positive affirmation on the information that people were going to share with other people, which was great.
Yeah, had a lot of positive feedback.
lots of fun, lots of interaction. That's always nice to see, even when chat box is the only way to do that. It's nice that people are really engaged, and I wish my daughter would have come closer so I could have had her read and translate the Spanish for me.
I was trying to translate it on the fly. So Maria, I did the best I could. I didn't get it in fast enough to translate it. Sorry.
I was trying to put it in my phone as well, and I couldn't.
I did translate 2 of them, but that was about all I could get out.
Yeah. So,
I'm working on just a piece of information. I'm continually working on our ability to be able to translate our Zoom sessions and figure out a way to do that. That is certainly a goal of Panacea, to be inclusive in that manner. And we continue to search for funding to be able to offer translation pieces. And we are, I'm really grateful to say, able to offer a Spanish CDA class this next coming year. We offered one this year. So that is something that if you're interested in CDA, I forgot to mention that earlier. We also offer 2 English CDA courses.
And that's time consuming. I taught the CDA last year for Northern Pennsylvania Regional College, and Jackie taught a session too. To have to do that in Spanish is even more.
Yeah, we are very fortunate that we have engaged a Spanish speaking instructor. So we are very fortunate. And we did it one year without a Spanish speaking instructor and used a tutor. And that was difficult, but very fortunate that we're able to do that.
And are all the materials available in Spanish now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
thought I saw that.
I mean, she's bilingual, but all of the materials I order for our students are in Spanish.
Right, in Spanish.
Yeah, it is fully Spanish. Still have a few people hanging on yet. So we will probably wrap this up in just a moment. Kevin, I will ask that you stop the recording. Darlene and Cynthia, just to make sure you are comfortable with us posting this on our website, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
We're fine.
Okay.